All right, Shalom, elect. Today's date is May 19th, 2021. This is Dr. Ephraim. Hope everyone is having a great day. I actually had planned to just post the dedication to the beautiful woman of Zion post today, but someone posted something very ignorant. And it's always that one. That's the thing that gets me about the internet. And made a comment about quote unquote, half breeds of, Israelites, whatever, and which was totally inappropriate. I mean, can't we just have something positive and just celebrate and embrace each other without somebody coming on with some nonsense? I mean, it just pissed me off. But at the same time, I kind of wanted to address this real quick, and I'm going to repost a lesson I did on. Initially, it was released in October of last year. Examining the whole color complex thing amongst our people, right? And so, listen, we get it, or should get it. We know that the seed of Israel, we're mixed. We're literally mixed into every nation. Okay, we're not even dealing with that. That's the least of our concerns. All that half breed and this and that and who's Israelite and who's the second and third generation removed, all this stuff. Listen, my problem with a lot of us is we put our focus and energy on things that we should not be worried about. That is the least of our concerns. Okay, because for that we don't even have the starting point for that. Okay, let's leave that to the Most High. I made that post to celebrate our beautiful women of Zion all over the world, because especially now, because I mean you wouldn't know that black women are loved by a lot of the images that you see and a lot of the things that you see. I mean, I'm not even gonna get into it. You all know what I'm talking about. So I did that because I love us. Loving your people doesn't mean you hate anyone else. Okay, it's not about that. But I posted that post, and that's the second one I did to celebrate the beautiful black women of Zion. Okay, and I don't make no apologies for that. That speaks for itself. But I wanna I was inspired though when someone made that ignorant comment. I was inspired to hop on. It's like, what, I'm gonna reshare that lesson I did from October of last year. All right, so I have a lot of new supporters who's never seen that. So, and if you have, hey, cool. But I wanted to resubmit that so you all can kind of check that out. All right, let's get it. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Ephraim saying hi by Yeshua HaMashiach. I hope everyone is well and had a peaceful and productive day. Today's date is October 20th, 2020. All right. And I decided to do this lesson because I was inspired by something I read. It really hit me in a certain way. Um, and I've actually thought about it before. Many years ago, I wrote I don't know if you remember, many of you remember those Facebook notes. I kind of did an article on what we're about to get into today, the whole light skin versus dark skin debate, amongst our people. But if you're a Negro, or so-called African American, uh, we all know that this is one of our little hidden little secrets, dirty little secrets, whatever you want to call it, that, we don't like to talk about. Many of us like to deny, we don't admit it, whatever the case may be. But it's deeply psychological, and it does exist. And it really hit me and inspired me in a certain way. I said, you know what? I wanna tackle this. Because how can we ever truly expect to unite as a people if we're using something like our melanin or pigmentation to divide us, or to hate on us, or be quote unquote racial within ourselves, right? I mean, just the thought of that is just, I mean, it's divisive, yes, but it's problematic because it speaks directly to our ability or inability, to truly unite with each other. And it's sad. I mean, black people, we come in all beautiful shades of black. Okay, from the darkest of the dark to, dark brown, light brown, mocha, red, yellow, light. I mean, you name it. And we're the only race of people that can say that. And that's great. But again, it's problematic if we ourselves use that as some type of divide, right? So, let's get into it, right? Light skin versus dark skin. Does intra-racism really exist? This is the age-old question and debate. I submit to you all that this is yet another one of our dirty little secrets within the so-called African American community. Who, what, and where was this seed of dissension with the sole intent to create divide planted, and more importantly, why? Can and will this keep us from truly uniting as a people, and how can we unite, again, if we have preconceived prejudices against one another based almost exclusively on the color of our skin? How is this any different than a non-black with the same prejudices and preconceptions about us? Is it in fact prejudice, or is it simply preference? Many times that proverbial line is oftentimes blurred, because the truth is there's a fine line between the two with not much room on either side. There's strength in numbers, but you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? Is this a weakness for our people? Do black people have serious identity/self-identity issues based on color pigmentation? Do we hate on each other because some of us are darker or lighter in skin tone? Are we more or less receptive to our leaders based on skin tone? Does this affect job placements or the placement of blacks who are put in positions of power or authority? I mean, come on, let's be honest. Let's be totally honest here. If Barack Obama was Wesley Snipes' complexion, he wouldn't even have gotten out of the gate for the presidency of this country, much less actually winning it. And that's a harsh reality. Is it coincidence that every time there is a quote-unquote first black for something, 9 times out of 10 that person is light-skinned? First black to the Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall, light skin. First black governor, Douglas Wilder, light skinned. First black Secretary of Defense, Colin Powell, light skin. First black General of the U.S. Air Force, Benjamin O. Davis, light skin. But the first black heavyweight boxing champion was Jack Johnson, who gave less than a you-know-what. Very dark-skinned black man. First black Major League Baseball player, Jackie Robinson, dark-skinned. So you guys get the picture. So what does the precedent, seem to be, or seem to imply? I don't know about you, but to me it implies that if you're a light-skinned black, you're looked at more favorably historically in this country for positions of power, prestige, and considered somehow more intelligent than darker skinned blacks. But if you're dark skinned, you're looked at more as a workhorse, field type athlete. Does this hint of a superiority/inferiority complex bestowed upon us by others in this country? With all that being said, how many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, she's cute for a dark-skinned girl," not even realizing that the underlying implication by that statement is that dark-skinned girls are not supposed to be cute? I feel in many ways we've been brainwashed to believe and equate beauty with everything that's white or close to it, right? How many of you are familiar with the infamous Willie Lynch letter entitled "The Making of a Slave"? The authenticity of that letter to this day has been hotly debated, right? But what cannot be debated is the contents therein that lays out the plan and foundation for how to keep black people enslaved, if not physically, mentally. See, because to me, everything else is semantics. It doesn't matter if Willie Lynch was a real person or a fictitious person. It doesn't matter if that event actually took place. And I don't know why. And that's the thing that gets me with our people, It's like we concentrate on the wrong things, and it's so annoying. Anytime someone tries to come with information to help us get better, to help us, unite ourselves, it's like we look for ways to downplay or to grade or just whatever, just to be negative, right? And forgetting about the content. Forget about Willie Lynch. The focus should be on the content of that letter. All right? And for many of you who are familiar with it or not familiar with it, here is the Willie Lynch letter in its entirety. Now, this speech was said to have been delivered by a Willie Lynch on the bank of the James River in the colony of Virginia in 1712. It says Lynch was a British slave owner from the West Indies. He was invited to the colony of Virginia in 1712 to teach his methods to slave owners there. And the Willie Lynch letter goes like this, quote, "Greetings, gentlemen. I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord 1712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me up here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that, if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of my list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, sizes of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust and envy, stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, mm, and the male versus the female. You must also have white servants and overseers who distrust all blacks. Hmm. But it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thank you, gentlemen. End quote. Now, the biggest takeaway, several, I mean, it's laid out in plain language, but the biggest takeaway for me was with the whole, light skin versus dark skin thing is the status. Because quote unquote light skinned slaves or the house slaves were treated better. Okay. They ate better. They wore better clothes, and the list goes on, right? So whether or not this person existed or this speech was given or written, what's true and what matters is that the contents of it are exactly what we are experiencing today. Anything else is irrelevant, at least to me. But before I delve deeper into uh, the lesson or the presentation, I think it's important to discuss where this concept of race and by color came from. Because what's fascinating is that we have all these different races of people in the world and different colors and complexions and whatnot. But way back in ancient times, even though classism pretty much always existed, you either had or you didn't have, right? Have and have not. So that existed since the beginning of time, pretty much. But it wasn't based on your race, though. When you factor in race and basing a person's class on their race, that becomes a totally different thing. So um, I think it important to touch on that. So uh, the origin of where the concept of race and color came from is from a German physiologist by the name of Johann Blumenbach. Okay, Johann divided the human species into 5 races in 1779. They were the following. The Caucasian or white race, Blumenbach was the first to use this term for people of European, Middle Eastern, and North African origin. Interesting. The next is Mongolian, or the yellow race, including all East Asians and some Central Asians. Next is Malayan, or brown race, including Southeast Asian and Pacific Islanders. And the next is the Ethiopian or black race, including sub-Saharan Africans. And they actually include us in that classification, the Ethiopian or black race classification, obviously. And lastly, the American or red race, including American Indians. Now, his further anatomical study led him to the conclusion that individual Africans differ as much or even more from other Africans as from Europeans. And that's telling because we all know that even though we're all from the continent of Africa, we are from different bloodlines. So that's telling right there. Says Blumenbach argued that physical characteristics like skin color, cranial profile, etc., depended on geography, diet, and mannerism. Now, but Blumenbach claimed that Adam and Eve were Caucasian inhabitants of Asia, and that other races came about by degeneration from environmental factors such as the sun and poor diet. Thus, he claimed Negroid pigmentation arose because of the results of the heat of the tropical sun, while the cold wind caused the tawny color of the Eskimos, and the Chinese were fair-skinned compared to the other Asian stocks because they kept mostly in towns protected from environmental factors. He believed that the degeneration could be reversed in a proper environmental control, and that all contemporary forms of man could revert to their original Caucasian race. Moreover, he concluded that Africans were not inferior to the rest of mankind, concerning healthy faculties of understanding, excellent natural talents, and mental capacities, and wrote the following, quote, finally, I am of the opinion that after all these numerous instances I have brought together of Negroes of capacity, it would not be difficult to mention the entire well-known provinces of Europe, from out of which you would not easily expect to obtain offhand such good authors, poets, philosophers, and correspondents of the Paris Academy. And on the other hand, there is no so-called savage nation known under the sun which has so much distinguished itself by such examples of perfectibility and original capacity for scientific culture, and thereby attached itself so closely to the most civilized nations of the earth as the Negro. How about that? He did not consider his degenerative hypothesis as racist, and sharply criticized Christoph Meiners, an early practitioner of scientific racialism, as well as Samuel Thomas von Sommenrigg, who concluded from their autopsies that Africans were an inferior race. See, that's where that Hitler crap kind of stemmed from. But Blumenbach wasn't on board, and he's the origin of the race identification. Blumenbach wrote 3 other essays stating that non-white peoples were capable of excelling in arts and sciences in reaction against racialists of his time. These ideas were far less influential. His ideas were adopted by other researchers who used them to encourage scientific race. And so there it is there, okay? And I wanted to include that because I thought it was important, all right, in the grand scheme of what we're talking about here, to give it some context, right? All right, so moving right along. Shout out to Johann Blumenbach. Good looking out. Okay, now research has long found that the hue of one's skin significantly structures access to opportunities and desired resources among African Americans. And that's Drake and Clayton, 1945, Monk, 2014. Originating from slavery and European colonialism, colorism is a dimension of stratification that derives from racism. It is inextricably linked to hegemonic beliefs in the social superiority of whites over all other racial groups. Hunter, 2007. Colorism, therefore, constitutes an ideological and structural system of inequality that affords special advantages to lighter-skinned individuals because of their closer phenotypic resemblance and presumed genetic similarity to Europeans, and therefore to Eurocentric standards of beauty, morality, intellect, and status. Dixon and Tellis, 2017, Russell Wilson Hall, 1992. While skin color represents a salient dimension of race, the processes through which it shapes health and well-being among African Americans is both related to and distinct from those of race. Hunter, 2007. That is, the experience, nature, and consequences of institutional racism and interpersonal discrimination differ among those of lighter versus darker skin. For example, scholarship has consistently found that despite access to fewer social and economic resources among all African Americans compared to whites, lighter-skinned blacks are more advantaged than their darker-skinned counterparts in the labor market. Monk, 2014. Wade, Romano, and Blue, 2004. The criminal justice system perceived personal attributes such as attractiveness, intelligence, and morality. Adams, Kurtz, Costas, and Hoffman, 2016. And to a lesser extent, discrimination. At times, the magnitude of skin tone inequalities among African Americans is similar to the magnitude of white-black disparities. These findings suggest the existence of light skin privilege in which individuals and social institutions unequally afford opportunities and assign social power to minorities according to indicators of status, e.g., skin tone, other than assumed race. Skin tone, therefore, represents an entrenched status characteristic both related to and distinct from race. Prior research also highlights the gendered nature of colorism. Scholars have noted that skin complexion is more consequential for Black women's lives than Black men's. Intersectionality theory provides a lens through which we can understand how light skin affords special advantages and opportunities to African American women in ways that it does not for men. Specifically, intersectionality posits that social inequalities are simultaneous and interdependent, combining in multiplicative rather than additive ways to mutually construct one another and structure unique social contexts that frame lived experiences and life chances. Individuals situated at similar locations in the social structure therefore have shared yet distinct social realities. Indeed, scholars have noted that as a result of its intersection with sexism, forms and consequences of colorism vary by gender. For example, physical appearance and attractiveness are critical components of socioeconomic success for women of all races living in a patriarchal society. Beauty can be a substitute for or considered equivalent to ability and characteristics employed by men, e.g., intelligence, political influence, to increase their life chances. As a result, beauty, defined in the U.S. by fairer skin and other indicators of European features, is a form of capital for women. For African American women in particular, light skin acts an additional form of capital that can be used to accumulate more social and economic resources compared to darker skinned women and black men. Similarly, skin tone may be more consequential for women than men because of its role in mate selection. Marriage is one mechanism through which socioeconomic position may be enhanced, particularly for women. Black women with lighter skin are more likely to marry men of greater social and economic status because of their perceived attractiveness and presumed characteristics regarding femininity and morality. Upward mobility via marriage to high status men may constitute a particularly relevant factor for African American women's health compared to their male counterparts, as these women experience disproportionately high rates of socioeconomic disadvantage that translate into fewer resources, e.g., income, wealth, power, for promoting health. Therefore, the advantage lighter-skinned women have in marriage can increase their access to socioeconomic resources that not only improve healthy living and reduce exposure to health risks, but also lessen the potentially negative impacts of the absence of other health-promoting resources, e.g., Ross Morowski. Taken together, the intersections of race, skin color, and gender may differentially shape the role of skin tone in structuring health among African American men and women. Now, this reference is by Hargrove, T.W., subject light privilege, skin tone, stratification, and health among African Americans, sociology of race and ethnicity, end quote. And that concludes the research or the lesson. And I'm going to give my final thoughts. Yes, as a people, I do believe we need to love each other better, treat each other better, respect one another. Uh, Everyone has a preference, right? And that's fine. But if your preference is based solely on the complexion of another black person, that is just wrong on so many levels. It just it really it's just wrong. You know, being from the South, there used to be a saying, uh, with they said the dark skinned girls you play with them, and the light skinned girls you stay with them. And I mean, just look at sports, look at the entertainers, man, look at the rappers. That's what they promote. And please believe, listen, we come in all beautiful shades, right? But if you look at the prominent black men and who's on their arms, you wouldn't know that we come in all beautiful shades because that's not what they represent at all. I mean, you love who you love. You know, far be it from me to, to tell someone who to love. But I just think when it comes to intra-racism, we need to stop that, man. We really need to come from that. That there's no way we can unite if we're hating on each other because of the complexion or the color of our skin. Okay, you have a preference for dark men or light skinned women or dark women, whatever the case may be. If that's your preference, okay. That's fine. Or be it for me again to tell you, what does it for you. But let it be based on attraction that's not what you can see with your eyes, right? My whole thing on that is that I'm attracted to a lot of things in a woman that I can't see, right? I've dated the spectrum of black women and complexion. I honestly do not see. I have no preference for dark skin, brown skin, light skin, whatever, when it comes to the black woman, because I know and I appreciate and salute the fact that we come in all shades. All right, so that being said, I'm not going to drag this out. I hope you all enjoy this presentation. And I wanted to give my take on it. All right, and until the next lesson, this is Dr. Ephraim signing off, saying Ahaya Ba'Yashem, Yeshua HaMashiach, Shalom.